Good evening, folks, and welcome to the Horror Corner. I'm your host, Sean Patrick Gershon. This week we are counting down the top 10 most underrated horror sequels of all time. Yes, gonna have a lot of fun with this, guys. Worked hard on my list, and I'm excited to bring it to you. And I hope you enjoy it. Now, of course, take into consideration that these are just my opinions. If you want to put your top 10 list in the comments below, or if you want to do a video response, feel free to do so. I would love that. So I'm only going to have one honorable mention, and that's going to be Amityville 2, The Possession. Yes, the sequel in the Amityville horror franchise, which I actually feel is better than the original. I feel like the original is overrated, Not a lot happens in the film, and it's very boring, I feel like. Anytime I watch it, I fall asleep every time. It's got a great cast and everything, but just not enough happens. I know in these ghost story type movies, less is more, but in this case, it wasn't enough to keep me interested in. Plus, I always found what happened originally in the Amityville house to be more interesting than what happened afterwards when the Lutz family moved in and all that. I like the story about the original murders that took place in that house, when the young boy grabbed a shotgun and blasted his whole family, and then claimed later on that, voices in the house told him to do it, that he, basically became possessed by the voices in his head, I find that more interesting, and I just find it to be a better film. It's more entertaining. Alright guys, here we go. Top 10 most underrated horror sequels of all time. In at number 10, Child's Play 3. Now, I'll be honest, and I've said it before, I am not the biggest Child's Play guy, I do enjoy the franchise, and I think it's a lot of fun. I just don't take it seriously like a lot of people do. But I think when it comes to fun, Child's Play 3 is no exception. It's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great one-liners from Chucky. He's very funny. Great performance from Brad Dourif, as always. And I enjoyed the setting at the military school. I thought that was cool, and it was something different. And I liked seeing Andy a little bit more grown up. He's a teenager now. I thought that was good. But a lot of people seem to hate that one, or it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle, It's kind of a forgotten one. Alright guys, in at number 9, it's going to be a movie that, trying to follow up the original film is like almost impossible, and that is Jaws 2. Yeah, I mean, you might think they were crazy to even make a sequel to Jaws because, we're talking about the greatest shark movie of all time. To follow that up is like almost impossible. But I feel like they did a really good job, They brought Roy Scheider back as Chief Brody. And you got a lot of the returning cast members from the original. And they had great shark effects, some great action. And it is a little silly at times, and a little, kind of over the top at times. I like how it's almost like a slasher movie with a shark in some ways, where the shark is, stalking people and picking them off one by one. I thought that was really fun. But I will say the ending is really over the top. But it's a lot of fun, and that's what Jaws 2 is. It's a lot of fun, and it's well done, and it's solid, It's no way near as good as the original, but it's definitely a solid sequel. And in at number 8 is going to be Scars of Dracula. Yes, from Hammer Films. Now, I could have easily put Dracula AD 1972 or The Satanic Rites of Dracula in this category, or even The Legend of Seven Golden Vampires is a lot better than it had any right to be. But I picked Scars of Dracula because it's kind of the forgotten one. It's often overlooked. I will say one thing that hurts the film is that it's got these really badly rendered vampire bats. You can almost see the string hanging down from the ceiling at times. But other than that, I'll say one of the things that people complain about when it comes to the sequels in the Hammer Dracula franchise is the fact that Christopher Lee doesn't have enough to do, doesn't have enough dialogue in some of the sequels. But Scars of Dracula, he has a lot of dialogue and he has a lot more to do, and I love that. and I always want more Christopher Lee. Yeah, give me all Christopher Lee all day doing Dracula, because he's so great in the role, and that's why I love Scars of Dracula. I love seeing him play like the gracious host, the charming host, and of course later on he reveals his true nature, his bloodlust, and I love it. And it's also the most violent one out of the entire franchise, I would say. At one point you see Dracula stab a woman to death with a knife, which is really out of character, but yeah, I love Scars of Dracula. Alright, next up, this is going to be very controversial, I'm sure. I can just hear people talking right now. Halloween 5, yes. From 1989. Most people, I say, hate this film, and I do not agree with that. I enjoy Halloween 5. Yes, it was probably a little bit rushed. They rushed it out right the following year, right after Halloween 4 was such a success. And yeah, I do wish they took a little bit more time with it and polished it more. But as it stands, there's a lot of great stuff in Halloween 5, in my opinion. I love this scene with Dr. Loomis when he's trying to talk to Michael and talking about, the rage. You think if you kill them all, it will go away. And then Michael kind of acknowledges that and turns his head up. And I love Don Shanks in the role of Michael. I think he does a great job. Love that scene. There's a lot of great scenes, like the laundry chute scene with Jamie Lloyd hiding in the laundry chute and Michael finds her and stabs the crap out of it. That's scary, And that's one thing about Halloween 5. I think it's a lot scarier than Part 4 was. And there's some genuinely creepy scenes of Michael stalking outside, and watching. Especially the scenes with Rachel when he's like creeping in the closet looking at her, really creepy stuff. So yeah, I think Halloween 5 gets a lot of crap, I'm not going to sit here and say it's perfect. It definitely has flaws, Everybody talks about those cops with the clown music in the background, I know. But I think there's a lot of good stuff in Halloween 5 that people overlook. So that's why I think it's underrated. And I think it makes a good companion piece to Part 4. Alright, in that number 6 is going to be Return of the Living Dead Part 3. Yes. I think this is a really good sequel, And I think in some ways it's actually better than the original. I like the original overall better because it's a lot more fun and crazy and zany and over the top. But I think Return of the Living Dead Part 3 is a very focused story. It's basically a love story between this guy and a zombie girl. So he feels responsible for causing her death. So he brings her to the place where, they bring her back to life, And she's zombified, but she's almost kind of normal at first, but she degenerates over time as the movie goes along, and her bloodlust starts to kick in, and her lust for flesh and wants brains, But at the same time, she's very conflicted about it, too. She doesn't really want to feed on human flesh and blood, so she starts, getting into masochistic stuff, cutting herself and, drinking her own blood. And at one point she grabs some glass and shoving it in her face, It's pretty sick, but it's a really well done movie. Highly underrated sequel. And in at number 5 is going to be Friday the 13th, Part 5. A New Beginning. Yes, the black sheep of the Friday the 13th franchise. This one definitely gets a lot of hate. Because of the fact that, you know, spoiler alert, if you guys have not seen Friday the 13th Part 5, Jason is not the killer. Now, Jason does make appearances in Tommy Jarvis's dreams, but he's not actually the killer. The killer is actually a copycat killer of Jason Voorhees. And that part of it, you know, the reveal at the end, I feel was pretty badly done, you know. I didn't feel like they built up the Roy character enough to be the killer, you know. It was just kind of like random. But the film overall is a lot of fun. You know, it's got some great characters, a lot of zany, crazy, over-the-top humor. I love the Ethel character; she's hilarious. I love the sleazy aspect of it. There's nudity left and right. You know, it's definitely a little bit more extreme. There's a lot more kills than the typical Friday the 13th film as well, and really cool kills too. So yeah, I think Friday Part 5 is a lot of fun and definitely underrated. Okay, and at number 4 is going to be Day of the Dead, the third film in George Romero's zombie franchise. And it's often looked at as the weakest of the original trilogy. And I think that's true, but the fact that it's following up two of the greatest zombie films ever made, that's why I think Day of the Dead kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Even though it's a really good film, it's awesome actually. It's got what I feel the best gore effects in the entire franchise. Just top-notch work from Tom Savini. You know, I feel the zombies look a lot better, they're a lot more decayed looking, and you know, a lot more gore. You know. And I love the story. I love the how it's secluded, you know, in that underground military bunker. Gives you a very claustrophobic feeling. These people are trapped in there with the zombies, basically, you know. And a few crazy, whacked out, you know, military guys there. Like, you got Joe Pilato as Captain Rhodes. He's just bonkers, you know. And you got these scientists trying to figure it out, and they're arguing with the military men, you know, it's just craziness, you know, and it all breaks down, it all falls apart, and it's just great to watch. And of course, you got the most famous zombie of all time, probably, the Bub character is great, you know, and it's got the most satisfying death scene of all time with Captain Rhodes, and then you got Bub gives him the salute, and I love that. And then just before he dies, it's a choke on him, and all the zombies surround him and rip his head off and his guts out, you know. It's awesome. In at number 3 is going to be one that you never really hear anybody talk about, and that is Dracula's Daughter, which I have as part of this Dracula collection from Universal Films. Yeah, I mean, I love Dracula's Daughter. I think it's a fantastic follow-up to the original. And I love Gloria Holden's performance as the Countess Maria Zaleska. I think she's just fantastic. I love how she's like the reluctant vampire. And she does such a great job. You know, she just wants to be rid of the curse of vampirism. And yeah, I love her story, and what a great acting performance. And yeah, I feel like this one just gets overlooked because it didn't have Bela Lugosi come back, you know, it had Dracula's daughter, you know. Dracula had been killed in the first movie, so now you have, you know, Dracula's daughter picking up the mantle, but I think it's so well done. You had Edward Van Sloan returning as Van Helsing, once again has a great performance. And I love the side characters in the film as well, you know. And you did have kind of that a little bit of lesbian vampire tones and tendencies in there. It wasn't over the top, of course, but it was in there a little bit. Okay, in at number 2 is going to be Psycho 2. Yeah, I know I need to get the Scream Factory version, of course, but until then, I just have it as part of this 3-pack here. Yeah, Psycho 2 is another one like Jaws 2, where you have to follow up this amazing classic that everybody loves. Plus, it takes place 25 years later, you know. But they did a fantastic job, you know. Definitely, Psycho 2 is criminally underrated. It's such a great film. I actually think the suspense in Psycho 2 is better than the original. Dare I say it? And you have an equally excellent performance from Anthony Perkins in the role of Norman Bates. And I love the story of it. It's very, very suspenseful. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. And you're always wondering throughout the movie, did Norman do it? Is he doing this? Or is it somebody else setting him up or trying to make him go crazy, you know? I love that. And you got a great supporting cast. You got Robert Loggia. You got Meg Tilly. Great, great movie. I love Psycho 2. Alright, in that number one, it might be another controversial one, but to me, the most underrated horror sequel of all time is probably the most polarizing one, and that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, baby. Yes! I love this movie, and I have loved it since the first time I saw it, since day one, when I saw it right after watching the original film, which I hold near and dear to my heart. I think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. And I think Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2 is the most underrated horror sequel of all time. I love the fact that they went for a bit of a different tone in the sequel. There's more humor, it's more over the top, and that's what makes it different from the original, you know, and I love that. And you did have Tobe Hooper coming back to direct, and he did a fantastic job. I love the fact that it's different in some ways than the original, but yet at the same time it pays a lot of homage to the original, with the returning characters, and you know, it's continuing the story from the original. And you're introduced to a really great new character with Chop Top, played by Bill Moseley. I think Stretch is one of the best final girls in horror, you know, playing by Caroline Williams. I just love her character. I love the supporting cast. You know, you got Dennis Hopper with his crazy over the top Lieutenant Lefty Enright. He's just batshit crazy, and I love it. And that's what this movie is. It's batshit crazy, but it's so entertaining. It's so much fun. As opposed to the original, where it was so serious and so intense and so scary. This is almost the opposite of that, when it's crazy, over the top, gory, where the original didn't have a lot of gore. This movie's got gore all over the place. And you got great effects from Tom Savini. He just makes like works of art, you know, with his horror and gore and bones everywhere, you know. I love the setting and the underground layer, you know. I think it's like an abandoned amusement park or something, but I love the setting. But yeah, I love this movie, and I think it's great. It's so highly entertaining. It's got lots of action, lots of humor, lots of blood and guts, and you got a great final girl, and amazing film. I will always defend Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. And that's it, guys, for the top 10 most underrated horror sequels of all time. What are your top 10? Like I said, give me your list in the comments below, or do a response video, and I would love to see your picks. And thank you for joining me, Sean Patrick Urshan, in the Horror Corner. Tune in and stay scared.